Oh, yes, Lord. We thank you, Jesus. We thank you for a covenant people this morning. A covenant people who decide, Lord God, that you are the head of their lives. Lord, and as we pray right now, we pray that the word of God come forth. We bind distractions in the name of Jesus. And we release focus. We release that focus on what the word of the Lord is saying to the body of Christ today. In the name of Jesus. Hallelujah. Glory to God. We just thank him each and every day, don't we? He didn't have to do it. He just loved us just that much. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Well, it's 11 o'clock, and it's time for our service to start. My name is Leon, and I'll be conducting the pulpit today. Praise the Lord. And we welcome you to Center of Attraction, where Jesus is the center of attraction. Hallelujah. 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 We're going to read our vision and our mission statement. You can stand, please. Our vision: to be the best training and evangelistic ministry in the world. Our mission: exists for the purpose of glorifying the name of Jesus through worship, Christian discipline, and the proclaiming of the gospel. What kind of place is this? A progressive and prosperous place. A place of worship to our God, an apostolic and prophetic place. A place of community and international outreach. A place exploding in growth. And what did Jesus say in St. John 12:32? And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. So what we're going to do today? Lift him up. Lift him up. Lift Jesus up. Is going to come from Psalm 92, and it says, "It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to show forth thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness every night. Upon an instrument of 10 strings, and upon the psaltery, upon the harp, with the solemn sound. For thou, Lord, have made me glad through thy work. I will triumph in the works of thy hand. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. A brutish man knoweth not, neither does a fool understand this. When the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish, it is that they shall be destroyed forever. But thou, Lord, art most high forevermore." Hallelujah! Thank you, Jesus. Oh, glory! You are the highest high, and we thank you, Lord. Hallelujah! To be whatever there was, that was you, Lord, and we worship you. We worship the King of Kings. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. We thank you this morning. Oh, Lord. Yes. We give him all the glory and all the praise. He is above everything. The God we serve. Amen. Amen. Now we're going to have our praise and worship team come on up. Praise God together.
That was so beautiful. But I was asking myself a question. Why does my hallelujah belong to you? Why does God deserve the glory? You all know that hallelujah is the highest praise, right? Everybody know that hallelujah means when you say hallelujah, you're saying what? Praise the Lord. And that's the highest praise because Jesus is over and above everything. So when you say hallelujah, you're saying praise the Lord. And you look it up and say, you are a creator. You are Elohim. You are the Most High God. There's none like you. There's none compared to you. So I asked myself that question. So I went to Revelation because we need to understand why God deserves all the praise. Well, it said in Revelation 4, when you go into this, you'll see the different people worshiping, giving thanks. Look at verse number 8, 4 and 8. The four beasts had each of them 6 wings about him. They were full of eyes within. They rest not night or day, saying, holy. Somebody say, holy. 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. Say, hallelujah. Hallelujah. And those beasts give glory. Somebody say glory. And honor. And thanks to him that sat on the throne, who lives forever and ever. Hallelujah. 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 It belongs to you, God. My hallelujah belongs to you, God. You didn't have to do it. Well, let me stop there for a minute. Verse 10, the 4 and 20 elders fall down before him that sat upon the throne and worship him that liveth forever and ever and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things. What did it say? For thou hast created. Who are we talking to? Somebody say, I'm talking to the Creator. But thou hast created all things, and you deserve the glory. You deserve the honor. You deserve the power. We worship you, God. We give you the glory. We give you the honor. I told Pastor I was going to preach today. Huh? So when you keep going to chapter 5, there was this book, and they wept much. Verse 4, I wept much because there was no man found worthy to open and read the book, neither to look therein. And one of the elders said, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book, to loose the 7 seals thereof. And beheld, lo, in the midst of the throne, and the 4 beasts in the midst of the elder, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. 7 is the number of perfection. Completion. 7 is the number of authority. So Jesus is this lamb right here. The day of my sister Audrey's birthday yesterday was Joyce. And she was telling me, she said, I spoke to that knee and command the pain to come out. Say, you're not supposed to be here. You get out of my knee right now. In the name of Jesus. And she said, once I didn't accept it and told her to get out and left. Come on, y'all. Don't receive it. But God, I believe that you are the same today, yesterday, and forever. You still Dr. Jesus. You're a knee replacement. Hey, heal the knee right now. Replace the knee right now. You got plenty of spare parts in heaven. Right now, Jesus. Right now, Jesus. Right now, Jesus.
problems I kept to myself. I thought I could hold it. I thought I could contain it. I kept it in my heart for so long. I depended on your strength. I depended on that strength. Every problem I had, I held it in. But where my errors were, I should have used your strength and gave it to you. Forgive me, Lord, for holding my burdens away from you. I should have gave it to you from the start. I should have gave it to you from the beginning. That's somebody's testimony today. All of my tears, all of my worries, all of my errors, all of my planning, everything wasn't in line with you. But you still love me. Even though I went my own way, you still love me. I tried to fight my own battles when I should have gave it to you to handle. Thank you for still loving me. 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 I give myself away. I give myself away so you can use me. I give myself away. I give myself away.
anybody out there, you need to give yourself back to God. You gave yourself to God and you took yourself back. You gave yourself to God, then you got angry with someone and you took yourself back. But you need to let all that go. You need to let it all go. If that's you, come to the altar. We got ministers that can pray with you. God, I'm going to give myself to you 100% this time. I'm not going back. I am not going back. I'm not going to try to fight this battle with the wrong weapons. We see one person coming up. Come on, ministers. Come on, ministers. Come on up. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Come on. Hallelujah. Yeah, yellow shake. Sherelle, come on down and I'm also want to pray for Sherelle. She had a family member that died a tragic way. Somebody else, you had two relatives die. Bertha, come on down. Shalata, Bertha. They were young too, weren't they? Come on, we're going to pray for them too. Hallelujah. Anybody else that had anything happen in their family, loved ones died and shouldn't have gone. It wasn't their time, but something happened in the wrong place at the right time. You know, we need to learn how to obey God. Our life is not our own. God will tell us don't go somewhere, we go anyway. We're not listening to the Holy Spirit and something happens. Hallelujah. We did a class here today on hell and heaven. And hey, don't go to hell. Don't go to hell. We saw the videos and we studied the scripture. You don't want to go there. It's a place where the fire does not die, the worm don't die. And there's destruction. And there's one pastor, he was angry with his wife and he wouldn't forgive her. And he had a car crash and he died. And he was in heaven, but then the angel took him to hell. And he saw hell. And the angel told
for my good. He's intentional, never failing. All things are working for my good. He's intentional, never failing. All things are working for my good. He's intentional, never failing. All things are working for my good. He's intentional, never failing. So all things are working for my good. He's intentional, never failing. Oh, 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 It's working for me. It's working for me. It's working for me. I don't have to worry because it's working for me. It's working for me. It's working for me. I don't have to worry because it's working for me. My God is working for me. It's working for me. I don't have to worry because it's working for me. I believe it's working for me. It's working for me. I don't have to worry because it's working for me.
Yes, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Thank you. Thank you for your presence. And I hear God saying, you come to the altar for prayer. You will receive prayer at the altar. But we have to speak that prayer into existence. We have to believe that it is so. God's saying, don't think it, speak it, and it shall be. Anybody hear a word from the Lord? Just come on.
I kept hearing in my spirit, we utilize God's strength for the wrong things. We are so quick to use His strength to hold the troubles we have in our hearts. We misuse His strength and keep our burdens to ourselves when we're supposed to be releasing our burdens, releasing our pains, giving it to God. As we just got done singing, give ourselves away. That means giving your burdens away, give your problems away. Whatever you may be going through, don't harbor it in your heart. Utilize the Lord's strength to give you strength and give it away. You utilize the Lord's strength the right way. Don't hold your problems in. Talk to your friends. Talk to your neighbor. If you need prayer, come and get prayer. Don't hold it in your heart. That will create more anxiety. That will create more pain, more anger, more misery, more sorrow. Don't hold that pain in your heart. Utilize God's strength to give it away.
I was singing that song, You Deserve It. I'm just singing off unbelief, getting unbelief off, knocking unbelief off, knocking unbelief off, and then another hand coming back saying, I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. So I hear the Lord saying, we have to believe. Unbelief got to go in the name of Jesus.
Good morning. God is bringing healing to the body of Christ.
Yes, yes, He is.
He's bringing healing. There's different types of healing. Okay? There's the miracle of healing, and then there's healing that takes a process. It's a process that you go through. And I'm speaking from experience. God's healed me. Not completely, but I've gone through a process for 2 years. And I felt it from my neck down to my heels. My body was in pain, but I violated my conscience for years. Okay? Now this is important because I think it's something that the body of Christ needs to understand. When you know, I knew caffeine was not good for my body. Okay? And I would get off it for a couple weeks and then go back. But it wasn't helping me. I mean, I'd feel good for a little while, but it didn't help. But even when you know God's dealing with you, maybe it might be a food that you're eating, maybe something that you're doing. Unforgiveness even causes your body, the temple of the Holy Spirit, to be in mourning. And it's grieved, and it causes disease or sickness. So your conscience, when your conscience is clean and stays clean, your body heals itself. It's a process. It takes time. And sometimes it's not fun. It hurts. But even in 1 John chapter 3 John chapter, well, there's only one chapter. Verse 2, it says that I pray that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. So your health and your prosperity has to do with how you're thinking, what you're thinking, and what you're doing. God has given us a heart of flesh, which is a conscience.
Amen.
Good afternoon. God, I heard him saying he's preparing a way for you. He's leading you down a path of righteousness for his name's sake. And sometimes you have to get lost to be found. When you are going down a path and you're trying to, sometimes the navigation takes you down a road that you don't want to go on, and you start panicking. And you seeing all these different areas, these different things that are going on, the wilderness and everything, and you begin to panic. But long as you keep your mind on him, he's leading the way. The devil tries to come to distract us and detour us, but God is taking us down a path if we keep our mind on him. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right. If God is before us, there's no need for us to shift our sight.
Praise the Lord. Amen. 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 Now we're going to have our announcements. We're going to have, very quickly, let's, Sister Sherry not here. We want to know that Men's Day is June 30th at 4 o'clock here at the church. Pastor Johnson, Apostle, preaches at Reaching the World Ministry, Thursday, June 20th at 6:30 p.m. The Faith Conference. Father's Day is June 16th. Come and let's celebrate Father's Day. Amen. Amen. Now, fasting and prayer every Wednesday. We have our Bible study at 6 p.m. and I believe it's 11 a.m. We have Bible study, but it's important that we fast on Wednesdays, okay? And tell somebody about Jesus and invite them to the church. Amen? Amen. Now, any first-time visitors? Oh, well, members, all right. Amen. Praise the Lord. Okay, members, scripture of the month. Who wants to recite it? Nobody? Well, let's put it up on the board.
Well, we have a hand right here.
Oh, we got a hand? I'm sorry.
Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, curse is everything.
All right.
Am I saying the right one?
This is June.
Okay, the wrong one. That's
That's a good one.
the wrong one.
It's Joshua 1 and 8.
Thank you.
This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe and do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. That's our scripture for the month. Amen. Hey, it's already.
I guarantee you that next Sunday, we don't have people getting up to recite the scripture. Service will not continue. Okay? I'm very serious about this. All right? So we will stay right at this scripture till the majority of us get this scripture for the month. All right? We ain't playing around. This ain't no playtime. This is serious. Somebody said this is serious. This has to do with your life. This has to do. There's not enough here. We need to get a little bit more. We need to, thank you. We need to get real serious about the word. So, we're not going to stumble at the word of God. Because if we stumble at the word of God, we're stumbling with God. And that's not our role in our assignment. So, yeah, I'm very serious about this. So, next week, we're going to know the scripture. Say next week.
Next week.
I will know the scripture. That this book of the law, in our time, the word of God will not depart from my mouth. I'm going to keep saying it. Amen. That all that's written therein, all that God has said, so that I can be prosperous. See, so that I have good success. So we heard it from the exhorters here today as it relates to the word of God, as it relates to healing. And these things come by the word. I'm telling you from experience, the word will keep you. So let me just say it one more time without being redundant, but effective still the same. That when we come to this part, we're going to have individuals, more than one or two on this side, they're going to stand. And individuals on this side, more than one or two, y'all going to stand. You're going to recite it. Amen. The best you can. Amen. Amen. Now, if you don't show up at church next week, I'm very serious about this too. I will call you out. If you don't show up next week because you don't want to do what Apostle asked of you. Okay? Now, with all that being said, I'll give you this, a slight smile, and let's move on with the service.
Praise the Lord. Amen. Serious. It's offering time now. Offering time. Offering time. Praise the Lord. If you need an envelope, just raise your hands, and we'll be sure to get you an envelope. Praise the Lord. Amen. Amen. While you preparing your offering, I will read Malachi 3, 8 through 11. Now, if you're making out a check, make it out to Center of Attraction. There's a couple hands there. And we do have a point of sale. So, remember that. Amen? Amen. Just keep your hand raised and we'll get you, make sure we get you an envelope. Malachi 3 and 8 says, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me, but ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithe and offerings. The 9th verse, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord. We're going to do our affirmation now. Everyone please stand so we can give our offering affirmation. Read it together. As we give our tithe and offering, we are believing you, Lord, for jobs and better jobs, raises and bonuses, benefits, sales and commissions, estates and inheritances, interest and income, rebates and returns, checks in the mail, healing and divine health, gifts and surprises, finding money, bills paid off, settlements, debt demolished, royalties received, scholarships and grants, contract, money management, 100-fold return according to your word in Jesus' name. Amen. Just follow directions of the ushers and bring your tithing and your offering, please. Praise the Lord. If there's any children's ministry, we can get the children, because the word of God is coming forth. Amen. 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 Apostle brings forth the word of God. Amen. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for the word that's releasing into the body of Christ today. Lord, we just thank you that the word that was put in the apostles' heart be received by the church. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you. Thank you. All that taking place here today, to God be the glory. Hallelujah. And the nursery is for the little people, and that's ages 1 to 4. And so please keep that in mind. We thank God for the word of God that we're about to see. The Bible says to have a listening ear to hear what the Spirit of God has to say to the church. Thank God for those of you who are here today. Amen. Elder James, Ava, Westons are in the house. Give them a hand. All of our family members, God bless you. God bless you. We've been talking about the significance and the importance of gifted servants, a gifted servant. And all of us are gifted. We are naturally gifted, we talked about, but we're also spiritually gifted. And we're not going to talk about the natural gift at this point because we need to be more supernatural than natural. This is a time certainly for that, to be more supernatural than natural. If not, then we begin to lean and consider and trust only in the natural concerning spiritual things. Now, Paul said, how is it you started in the spirit and end in the flesh? You cannot create spirit from the flesh. All right, you can't start in the spirit, end in the flesh, meaning doing fleshly, carnal, natural things and hoping and trusting that you're going to bud out, but for something spiritual. That ain't going to happen. So we have to stay spiritual. Say, I must stay spiritual. No matter what we're facing, no matter what we're going through, we're going to have to be spiritual. And God has gifted us, multi-gifted many of us, and that in the Spirit. Particularly regarding the Holy Spirit and His gifts. We're a many-membered body, as we discussed last time. As the natural body, I said, had functions and systems, i.e. respiratory system, muscular, cellular, digestive system. We also have a brain, heart, kidneys, liver, thyroid, etc., stomach. All of these organs, systems, and functions of our body has a particular responsibility and function. So it is with the body of Christ that functions with a system of life, a life system, a power system, but that which is supernatural. Amen. As the natural body systems must function independently and interdependently, then how much more the supernatural body of Christ must operate not only independently, meaning I have a gift and I need to function that gift in the body of Christ, interchanging with the other gifts that are also functioning. And this is why we have opportunities, amen, not only for natural function, as I said before, for the gear work of this ministry, so whether it's ushering or sound, media, singing, etc., but the spiritual. So we give opportunity for that as you come during that segment and time of the service to render a word. Now, of course, you know that we are prophetic and apostolic in our function as a ministry and as a church. But the scripture says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 that there are 9 gifts of the Spirit. Now, we may be functioning in that gift, but we are under wraps, which means this, that it is our fear and not our faith that gets us to not operate at all. And so you say after service, some of y'all to me, you know, I heard this, apostle, or I felt this and sensed this, but I didn't know if I should share. This is a ministry where you can share. Now, that's the protocol of this ministry. It's a supernatural activation in this house. That's our protocol. There's nothing different, nothing strange regarding that. There's a timing for it, but there's nothing different or strange about that. So you should not fear, for God has not given you the spirit of fear, because that will again hinder the functioning of the gifts of the Spirit. Now, it is the gift of the Spirit. It is the gift of the Holy Spirit. It's not the gift of your spirit. It's not the gift of the world or of a dark spirit, I trust. But it's the gift of the Holy Spirit. There are 3 spirits. There is the human spirit. There is a dark spirit or demonic spirit, which again comes from Satan. And then there is the Holy Spirit. We're talking about the Holy Spirit here today, and operating in the Holy Spirit in the house of God. Can somebody say amen? Amen. We're not doing enough of that, and that's why I've been teaching on a series regarding the Holy Spirit and His gifts. We can't operate in the gifts of the Holy Spirit in our spirit, or by and function through our spirit, or some dark spirit. So that means that we forego the dark spirit of Satan, and we also close shop, in a sense, with our spirit, so that the only spirit left is the Holy Spirit. Now, if it's His gifts, that means I have to have Him so that He can flow that gifts through me. Amen. I said amen. Amen. Because if we're trying to function again in any other spirit, it ain't the Holy Spirit, and it's not going to prove out well. Not at all. And it's not going to give God the glory. Not at all. So, this is why we've been talking about the Holy Spirit, because we need the baptism, the infilling of the Holy Spirit. It is a subsequent act of the Holy Spirit. We found this out in John chapter 3 and other associated scriptures, that the Holy Spirit comes and He is a change agent to bring Christ into our life. Jesus Himself said so. The scripture says so. That everything be established by 2 or 3 witnesses. The Bible says so. All right. Now, we have the Holy Spirit who have brought to us salvation. But this is where some of our brethren have stopped. And they don't want to go any further. I don't want to act like that. I don't want to behave like that. I know that's spooky. That's weird. That's beyond me. Well, it certainly is. And you should have thought of that when you got born from above, beyond you. For Jesus says that which is born of flesh is flesh, that which is born of spirit is spirit. Okay? You're born of the flesh, and that's why you're looking at me and I'm looking at you. You're in a tangible world because of mama and daddy. But now it doesn't stop there. Jesus says now there's another experience that's similar to that, meaning being born, but here you're going to be born again. Born from above, born by the Spirit, the change agent who brings the salvation of Jesus Christ in your life. But we don't stop there. There's a subsequent act of the Holy Spirit, and we see this in Scripture time and time again, and that is the infilling of the Holy Spirit to endue us with power so that we can live the life that Christ died to give to us. It's a supernatural life. Supernatural. And so we go to school to learn how to be this, that, and the other, or whatever the vocation that we're fielding ourselves in. What field of interest are you in? And you say, well, I'm in philosophy, or this science, this trade, this this or that. That has to do with the family of vocation. However, when it comes to spiritual things, we are sometimes dummies. Okay? And we have to make sure then that we put priority where it should be. Okay? Now, many of us are going through various issues in our life right now. It has to do with the physical. It has to do with the social, economical. It has to do with relational and every other aspect of our life. And I'm here to give you a way to escape, a way out. I'm here to give you an answer. And it is in the Holy Spirit. The answer is in the Holy Spirit. The solution, the antidote, the answer is in the Holy Ghost operating in your life. You have to let Him operate. You have to let Him operate. Because we're supernatural beings. Say, I'm a supernatural being. We've been taught that we are spirit, we have a soul, we live in a body. Say, I'm spirit. I have a soul. I live in a body. Now, I'll tell you this trichotomy nature that we have. The most important is your spirit. Say, the most important factor about my life is my spirit. And so you have to know how to feed your spirit. You got to know, you got to understand your spirit has doors. Your spirit has doors. You can open and close. We know that. And the synonym to spirit his heart. And it says in Revelation, Jesus said, I come and stand at the door of your heart. I am knocking to bring myself into you so I can come sup with you and you with me. Well, God ain't going to open your heart. You have to open your heart and let him in. You have to continue to open your heart to the things of God. Amen, somebody. Amen. If you know anything about cycling at all, and we're talking about bicycle, not unicycles or tricycles or any of that, okay? Bicycles, okay. Many of us had and still do have bicycles, all right? And haven't you noticed that there's a certain number of spokes in each wheel? I want you to understand this too, because I've experienced it. When I still wanted to ride my bike because some happenstance happened and I lost a spoke or two, and I said to myself, I can still ride this bicycle. Do y'all know what took place? There was a whole lot of shaking going on. I didn't look good, it didn't feel good, because I only lost a spoke or two. I'm here to tell you here this afternoon. How is it that you accept the Father and accept Jesus Christ and don't accept the Holy Spirit? You can't talk Trinity and want a duality of God. Well, I've accepted because Jesus said, you see me, you see the Father. You got me, you got the Father. I'm good to go. And I'm here to tell you because Jesus says, I'm the baptizer, Matthew 3:11, and I will baptize you with the Holy Ghost. He said the promise will come, Acts 1:8. It happened at chapter 2. Yes. Say, I need the baptism. The next act of the Holy Ghost after salvation. I need to be infilled, baptized with his supernatural power. The Greek called that power dynamite. Explosive. When you have the Holy Ghost in your life, you are exploding with God. That'll stop you from exploding in the flesh. Temper tantrums and ranting and raving and in the flesh and cussing people out and pitching a fit over little small things and losing your mind over little stuff and on and on and on, that your flesh would want to act itself out to the degree where you can't even stop yourself, because once you start, the fire is raging. If you're truly full of the Holy Ghost, that means you are nowhere to be found. Full of the Spirit, full of the Holy Ghost, full of the Holy Ghost, full of the Holy Ghost. Baptism infers fullness, full of the Holy Ghost, full of the Holy Ghost, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of God's grace. And when he comes in, he's going to act up. When the Holy Spirit comes in, he's going to act out. When the Holy Spirit comes into our life, and we allow him the liberty and the freedoms and don't grieve the Holy Spirit, the man of God said in Scripture, then he's going to act himself out. And your mind going to shut down on you, and your feelings, your reasoning, your emotion, you're going to be quiet and let the Holy Ghost act out. You're going to let him do it. Say, I'm going to let the Holy Ghost act out. I'm going to let him act. I'm going to let him move. The Holy Spirit is not a still God. He is not an image, an idol with a stable position. The Holy Spirit is always moving. The first time we hear of the Holy Spirit, he's moving as he was brooding like a hen over his chicks. This is what brooding means. Stretch some wings out and begin to do this. The scripture says he was pagan in the Hebrew. Brooding, covering the earth. He was moving. And positioning himself that when the Father said, let there be, Spirit start moving and creating. Let there be, the Spirit moved again. So we're seeing movement.
Yes.
Movement. The Holy Spirit has to do with movement. We are in the Holy Spirit dispensation. He is moving his church. And those of us that don't want to move, don't want to act, then we take on another spirit, a religious spirit. It don't take all of that. We don't need to do that. I got my own mind. Nobody tell me who he think he is, who she thinks she is. Who he think he is. I got the corner on God's market. I know. So we're gifted servants full of the right spirit, which is the Holy Spirit, right? Not the other two spirits, which is what is the other spirits? Demonic and the human spirit. No, this is the Holy Spirit. And Paul made sure that he wrote it like this. As he kept talking about the gifts, he kept saying the self-same spirit. Ain't no different spirit here. Self-same spirit with administration, with certain gifts. Same spirit in operation. Amen. Somebody over here is prophesying. Somebody over here is speaking in tongues. Somebody here is interpreting the tongues. Somebody said, I feel fire in my hand. He or she began to heal. Wow, there's different kind. No different. Same spirit operating. Paul said, make sure you operate though in order, in course. That you don't go all haywire and confused and causing this kind of another spirit, chaos, confusion, because he said that ain't from God. So now the human spirit has come in, and you just can't. I just can't stop myself. And I told you a little funny story last time, right? Of me stopping Pastor Aldridge because I had something to say. It was like fire in my bones. I had to say it. No, you didn't, James. You sit down. He's more gracious. He was more gracious than me. Amen. You can. All right, I'll move on. We ain't gonna have that here. Amen. Hallelujah. 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 Because God is about order. We ain't talking about man's order either. He's about order. So even though folk are running, LaFleur is playing the piano, a prophetess has a word that she's saying. Somebody said, man, they're all confused. No, same spirit, and it's an order of the spirit. And people who are natural can't understand spiritual things. And they want to comment on stuff they don't understand. Same spirit. Say it's the same spirit. So Paul began to talk about the Holy Spirit, his activity in the believer who have received him as the Holy Spirit and has infilled, baptized, have taken over his or her life. Hallelujah. And we know this because everything is established by 2 or 3 witnesses, and that person begins to speak in the Holy Ghost. Other Acts account said, and prophesy. Right? Amen. Paul later says that when we're in the Spirit together, we begin to sing hymns and sing songs and etc. All right. But the initial indication of somebody being filled with the Holy Ghost, begin to speak in tongues of men and of angels. All right? Men and of angels. Men, you could be talking Chinese, you ain't learned it. Some ancient dialect, you're speaking that. But then there is a tongue that's angelic, that is heavenly. Both can be interpreted. Amen. I'm I'm finishing my intro in a minute, and I'm watching the clock. But you need to understand where we're going here. You need to understand that we're not going to be a supernatural body of Christ and we relegate all of that supernatural giftedness to one or two people. The devil is a liar. It's not going to happen on my watch. And this is why, I've been coming strong here today, haven't I? Amen. All right, thank you. Because I didn't have breakfast, and so therefore, I don't want Apostle coming like this, feed me, till I want no more. No, just kidding. All right, I thought I'd just butter you up a little bit, and now let me go on back on my strength here. Okay. Now, we're a many-membered body, and we all must flow. If a part of your body stops, the other body has to pick it up, and it's such a drudgery. It's a labor. It's a toil to do so. Amen. I believe this. If you're full of the Holy Ghost, you say, and not functioning in the activities of the Holy Spirit, something wrong with you. I question what you claim you have. You backslid on the Holy Ghost. You only talk in tongues when you come to church or when the organ is playing. And the organ does work. But we're probably not going to see that much longer. Amen. There's a river of veining, a movement that God has for us. Amen. And actually there's an organ feature, I'm sure, on that synthesizer. Be it as it may. You see, and so when the music goes up, or you can't wait until Jessica jumps up and begins to run. I can't take it. I can't. Every time she jumps and runs, I can't take it. I got to run too. But if Jessica's not here, if the organ ain't being played, you're standing still, you're doing nothing. Because now you're looking for external stimulation to determine the movement internally of your Holy Ghost. The devil is a liar. I said it again. He and his mother-in-law. So we're very vocal here. I like that. It's okay. But we're not going to have all of our faith in one basket. Our faith has to be open to the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And the scripture says that we're going to read here in a moment, that the Holy Spirit, by his prerogative, gives it severally to those. And like everything concerning God, his kingdom, and his church, it is operated by faith. Not by comparison, not by some other way or means. It is by faith. I believe this is you, God. Leave it to the elders to determine if that's you or the Holy Ghost. But let that not even offend you and stop you from still desiring spiritual gifts. Amen, saints. I trust you're being convicted by this. Because we're not doing the church of God, the body of Christ, your local ministry, just as you're sitting on the Holy Ghost. When the Holy Spirit wants to move. So then, what's left? What's happening? I'll tell you, we're grieving the Holy Ghost. There's times here today, I'll admit, I leave here grieved because I said, Lord God, you could have done greater. You could have done more stupendously. but those that should have obeyed you did not. I still every Sunday when I come here look for miracles. I look for God to do great works among his people. But I'll tell you what hinders that. No faith. Unbelief. And the Market County could not do many works in his own town because they relegated Yeshua, Jesus, as the boy we once knew. He could not do many works because of their unbelief, other than heal a couple of small matters, a headache here, a leg ache, a toe ache, but nothing major. So I say to you, where is your faith? You're in a situation right now, and it has claimed you. Physically, mentally, relationally, socioeconomically, it has claimed you. And you know, naturally, you can't get liberty and freedom unless the Holy Ghost does something. So that means you're going to have to do something to get your faith to that level necessary for the breakthrough in your life. Turn to your neighbor and say, where is your faith? Yeah. Find your faith. Look at me, everybody. Look at me. Find your faith in your situation. Find your faith. Not source in you. You get what I'm saying. In God. Find your faith and you hold on and you don't let go. Let God talk to you. Let him touch you. Let him minister to you. Amen. 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 I'm talking to y'all. I'm talking to you about the Holy Ghost right now. We're not going to be satisfied where we are. Hey, we're not going to be satisfied what we're experiencing. There is a better day. My season, if it's not experienced by me now, is coming. You got to believe it. I was talking to God about promised land. I want you to know, I'm going to study this. I'll let you know when I get, all of the insights from the Lord. Why is land so important to you, God? Why is land so important? He tells Abraham, leave where you are. I got some land for you. Promised land. There was a time that expansive time took place. Now, the children of Israel are praying 400 plus years to be delivered. To be delivered to what? A promised land. Hallelujah. I'm going somewhere with this. Then when we think the earth is going to be burned up, it's a done deal. No more land. God says, I'm going to create a new heaven and a new earth. And those of you that think y'all going to be walking in heaven all day, that ain't scriptural. Because the Bible says 1,000 years will be on this land called earth. It's called the millennium. The kingdom of God on this earth. And New Jerusalem is going to come and hover over this earth. Property, land. There is a promised land. Here's my point. My God. Somebody say something on that. There is a promised land that you may not have experienced yet. God said, where is your faith in that? I'm not letting go. I said, I'm not letting go. How about you? I'm not letting go. Until I see my change come, until I see my promised land. I've been seeking God about my promised land. Amen. I said amen. Hallelujah. The entire Bible is about land. You think about it. The entire Bible, Les, is about land. But then there's other lands. the land of your mind, the land of your body. Those that are called after my name, Glenn, that's my property and my land. And the devil don't have nothing to say about the Glens and will not do anything contrary to the promise of God for the Glens. I need somebody to shout yes. For your legacy and your dynasty and your destiny. So we're gifted servants, full of the Holy Ghost. And in 1 Corinthians, if you could help me, please, ma'am. Chapter 12, verses 7 to 10. Here we go. The gifts of the Spirit. And we're going to release the proper anointing and administration and application of the gifts in your life. Once I'm done, you're going to receive it by faith. It has nothing to do with how young you are in the Lord, how old, your natural age. It has nothing to do if you're male or female. It has nothing to do with any of that other than, yes, Lord, I believe. Use me in your service.
Yes. Amen.
And God is not going to just, boom, put it all on you at once, little by little, because the kingdom doesn't operate with a great bang and a boom. The kingdom of heaven operates, kingdom of God operates one little measure at a time. When you're faithful over little, God begins to increase it more and more and more and more. Amen, saints. Amen. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. Profit. They're going to benefit. And the benefit is for the people of God. The gift is not for you to glow in some corner somewhere with your gift and to placard yourself and say, I have the gift of prophecy over here. Then somebody else has a sign on their chest over there. I have the interpretation of tongues and etc. No. And we also talked to you today, yesterday week, about you possessing gifts. You can't possess a gift. The gift possesses you. Thank you, Holy Ghost. That's a good way of saying that. You can't possess the gift possesses you. Will the gift possess me all the time? Possibly. Maybe. Yes. Yeah, maybe. But not necessarily so. All are yours. All of God is yours. And even though you're comfortable flowing in the prophetic, doesn't mean God won't touch you with the gift of healing. The truth is, in the name of Jesus, I just rebuke that off of all of us. This limited poverty mentality that we have is rebuked now by the authority of Christ. Verse 8 says, for to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit. Let's keep going until we get to verse 10, please. To another faith by the same Spirit, to another the gifts of healing, not just one gift, there's more than gifts of healing by the Spirit. To another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. So these are the 9 gifts of the Holy Spirit, not a human spirit or demonic spirit. It comes by the Holy Spirit. You see all of these gifts, 9 gifts. And I'm declaring right now that all 9 gifts are in operation in Center of Attraction Outreach. I'm declaring all 9 gifts are in operation in Center of Attraction Outreach. I am declaring all 9 gifts in operation in Center of Attraction Outreach. Amen. Thank you. That's a little bit. Hallelujah. I'm making declarations and you're still looking at me. Amen. Amen means so be it. Yes, I agree with that, what you just said, Apostle. Praise the Lord, saints. I told you at the beginning of the year, look at me. I told you at the beginning of the year, we need to press past the pressure to get to the promise. Yeah. How many have been waning on the vine? How many have been, your strength been waning this week, Stanley? Been struggling a little bit. It's been a little difficult. It's been hard. Stand. See what I'm talking about? Look at me. Where is your faith? You say, I got faith. Then you press past, because it has nothing to do with your strength. It has to do with the strength of Christ Jesus. It has nothing to do with you. So what if you wane? The older we get, our strength begins to wane. But I can do all things through Christ. You say, what am I going through? Wherever you are, whatever you're experiencing, look at me. Whatever you're going through, you can do it. You can do it. I can do this thing. Come on now. I can do this thing. Say it. I can do this thing. Yeah, right. Because you're starting into this thing victorious already. Christ in me said, the hope of glory. Amen. Clap for that. Say, I'm pressing past the pressure. To my promise. God will not allow or permit bad struggle, stress in your life. If he didn't have an antidote, a solution, a way to escape under the pressure, we will be patient. Who on it? Under the pressure, we come out. We're coming out like refined gold. We're coming out more than a conqueror. You got to start in like you're more than a conqueror. You got to start in knowing you're already victorious. Amen. Amen. I rebuke your emotions now in Jesus' name. I command them to find its proper place and not to take priority over your life. In the name of Jesus, your soul will not rule you because you are spirit. You have a soul. You live in the body. Tell your neighbor the fight is on, baby. The fight is on. Your environment, situation, circumstances don't tell you what to do. It should not convince you who you are and where you are, and that's where you will be as long as you live. My God, somebody, I need to shout for you right now. Thank you, Lord. Say, I'm better than this. Say, every stronghold, every attack of your mind, I cast it out. God, Lord, I'm talking about gifts. Hey, I cast it out now in Jesus' name. You got the victory. Stand on your feet. Say, I already got the victory. Clap for it. Praise God. Can't tell where I'm in the spirit of the Lord. I already got the victory. In the name of Jesus. You can be seated. You can't keep me down for long. I got to come back. Tell somebody I got to come back. How many times? As many procrastinating with it. Because you don't feel like it sometimes. The hits and the knocks of life cause you to be down so long, so hard. It hits hard. It hits below the belt.
Hallelujah.
Seems like you don't even have any more wind, no more strength to get up. But if you look up, call his name Jesus. For all who call on the name of Jesus shall be delivered. Deliver your sons today. Deliver your daughters today. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever, Lord. Come on, praise his holy name. Praise his holy name. Praise his holy name. Praise his holy name. Come on, do it. Praise him in advance. Come on, do it. Praise his holy name. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. There is a plan. Yes, come on, praise. There is a plan. Yes, it is. Put it up there, Jeremiah 29 and 11. There is a plan. Tell your neighbor there is a plan. And it's a good plan. It's a plan that will be good to me. Hallelujah. This is what God said. We're going to repeat what God said. For I know, come on y'all, the thoughts that I think, said the Lord. Thoughts of peace, not evil, to give me an expected end. Say, I have an expected end. I have a hope in the future. Better days are ahead. The best is still to come. An expected end. I got it. I'm not letting it go. It belongs to me. My blessing with my name on it. Say, my blessing with my name on it. Come on, give him praise and glory. Give him praise and glory. Already done. It's already done. It's already done. I said it's already done. It's already done. It's written in the books. It's already done. Come on, give him praise and glory. See, we got to get out of ourselves so I can get in yourself. And the trick of the devil is to always look at you and not look at me.
Hallelujah.
We're still at the lower rung, rather, of Maslow hierarchical needs. My need, my physiological, my psychological, my self needs, my wants. And therefore we can't gift ourselves out to others. But I read, we're going to pray. Give me that oil. Give me some of that. We're going to pray for some folk and we're going to close it down. We're going to pray for you. We're going to close it down. We're going to pray for you. We're going to close it because I feel supernatural. I feel supernatural right now. Hallelujah. That's how some of y'all need to shout. Glory to God. Our mouth is the valve that needs to be open. And all that stress, all of that fear, and all of that worry begin to go when you give God some glory. Give God some glory. Somebody say hallelujah. Somebody say hallelujah. Hallelujah. We won't get into any teachings this afternoon, obviously. Hallelujah. Amen. I'm looking for my land. I'm looking for what God promised me. He said, He spoke it, He convinced me, and it's been 20 years ago, but I still believe God. So the word says in Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God. Do what's right. Do what he wants you to do. That's right. I'm going to add to you. I'll take care of you. Don't you worry. Don't you stress. I got you. Now, you my child. I got you. You my baby. I got you. You my son. I died for you. You're my possession. You're my land. I'm your Lord. I'm your landlord. I got you. Say, Daddy got me. Daddy. Stop on that friend. Stop. Hey, Jesus, you just stop it right now. He knows. I say, God knows. Say with me, He has not forgotten me. I know you think so, but He has not forgotten you. God has not forgotten. He hasn't forgotten me. Hallelujah. My God, I feel prophetic here today. Let me hurry up. We're over time. We're done. But you need to understand this, that God is on your track. My God. The devil switched the track on you. And the rail went to the right. So your blessing can go away from you and not to you. I'm prophesying to y'all right now. Hey! But the Lord moved the track back. Hallelujah. Notice that track back where it needs to be. God is coming after me. Say, God is coming after me. God is coming after me. Come on, say, God is coming after me. Yes, He is. Here comes the devil putting that daughter in your mind, that son, putting your situation in your mind. And you say, I just rebuke that because God got that. God got me. Everything is all right with me. It's all right with me. Where is your faith? My faith is with God. I'm telling you right now, just come up and just make a line. I hope it's not a lot of y'all. Amen. Come on, make a line. We're going to anoint. Let's anoint them with oil real quick. I'm breaking some stuff off of you, man. Get ready, catch us. Come on. Get ready. We're going to move quickly. In the name of Jesus. Let me just say this so that we can let our viewers know, if you're not saved, you get your life right with God. Stop playing with your life. Stop playing with God. Receive the Holy Ghost. Receive Jesus as your Savior. Get into a good church home. Let me tell you something. Your government ain't your Savior. Your mom and daddy ain't your Savior. These social programs not your Savior. Jesus is your Savior. Receive Him today. God bless you.